Support for this podcast comes from the patrons at patreon.com/FMLFPL.
Okay, I have Ahmed Shubal with me. He is the Bournemouth staff writer for The Athletic, following the South Coast Cherries around this season upcoming. They're back in the Prem. Ahmed, how are you doing today, dude?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for some of your time to teach us about Parker's team. So, last year came up second place, mostly in that 4-3-3. Very settled, very stable team, more or less, outside of a couple changes in January. But, maybe you could give us kind of an overview of, how the season went.
So the season started brilliantly. Just to give you a sort of a brief synopsis of what happened. There was a 15-game unbeaten start to the season. It was a club record. The club hadn't done anything like that before in their history. And I think they set some kind of record. I think the last person to go that many or close to that many was Jean Tigana with Fulham back in, I think, it was at the turn of the millennium. And if you go further back than that, then I think those sort of records start losing their substance. But yeah, it started off really well. Parker had quite a threadbare squad, a few sort of academy players coming through. Two of them, Jordan Zamora and Jayden Anthony, who built up quite a nice partnership along the left-hand side. Jordan Zamora being the left back and Jayden Anthony being the left winger. All sorts of overlapping sort of neat passing moves. They're very good mates off the pitch as well, so that helps. They've got that chemistry building. So they were a big sort of part, also with Philip Billing around that sort of, they created like a sort of left-sided triangle along the left-hand side of the pitch. And that was a big part of Bournemouth's sort of attacking verve. Obviously, you've got Dominic Solanke spearheading the attack. 29 goals in the league last season, 13 all comps. And if it wasn't for that pesky Mitrovic, he would have probably come away as the sort of promoted striker to put all your chips behind in terms of those cheap forward assets in fantasy. But no, I think Parker definitely managed to instill his 4-3-3 system pretty quickly, pretty early on. And the way they play is very similar to Man City in the sense that they kind of attack with the front five. And I said, by the way, I'm going to go into quite detail with this, but this is like, I don't know how they're going to shape up in the Premier League, just as a precursor, because it's a completely different league. You go from having the majority of the ball in the Championship to having next to none of it in the Premier League, rather. And so to adjust, we don't really know for sure how Parker's going to line up. There is a possibility he might go with the back three / back five. He has fiddled with that at times last season. But just going on about last season, it was a 4-3-3. And sometimes, or the majority of the time, particularly against teams that sat back, which was quite a few Championship teams, they would attack with a sort of a front five. So it would be the front three, the left winger, the right winger, and the striker, and the two sort of number eights. So they would be sort of attacking midfielders almost. And they would make runs almost beyond the striker. They would almost, when they were out of possession, they would press the goalkeeper. Like they were sometimes the furthest sort of people on the pitch. And particularly Philip Billing, who, if you watched him in the Premier League before, you'd think of him as more of a defensive midfielder, and he's got that in his locker. But since he's been at Bournemouth over these last couple of seasons, he's unleashed a lot more of attacking potential. Similarly with Jefferson Lerma as well, who played the other number 8 role. So yeah, they were a very attacking sort of, not necessarily gung-ho, because they were quite conservative in the sense that when they went a goal up, they knew when to, they kind of pulled the handbrake up and would go to a back five, and that would invite pressure. But no, they definitely, Parker definitely imprinted his style pretty early on. And then came, after that 15-game unbeaten start, a very sort of bad winter slump where they lost to the likes of Hull, a dramatic loss at Luton. And it culminated in, I don't know if you saw this, but the FA Cup defeat to non-league Boreham Wood. And that was quite humiliating. That happened in around, I think, just the end of January, before Bournemouth had made all those signings. And it definitely sort of, that whole boring Parker sort of mantra, if you like, sort of started to creep up again, not just from Fulham fans, but from some Bournemouth fans as well. And a lot of it came from just this idea that there was a very specific style of play, a very rigid style of play, and that Parker was sort of very instructive in the way that he wanted his players to play. And they lacked that sort of attacking instinct, that you do certain things off the cuff, the little off the cuff bits of play in the final third that opponents are predicting. And there was just that idea that Bournemouth had become a bit more predictable in their attacks, and there was a little bit of truth in that. I definitely feel that, in the sense that, for example, both wingers play on the side of their weaker foot. So you've got Ryan Christie, who's a left footer. He's playing on the right. He cuts inside. Jaden Anthony on the left. Sorry, he cuts inside. And so when you know they're always going to cut inside, and you know the fullbacks are always going to overlap on the outside, or sometimes underlap on the inside, those sort of patterns of play becomes a lot easier to defend against. And you need a kind of a live wire, but there was just none of that in Parker's team at that time. And then you get towards the springtime, and then results start to pick up again. Bournemouth start to get back on the automatic promotion race, and it becomes a lot more expressive and a lot more free, and you start to see all these sort of late goals, and it just goes to show that they have this determination in them. Even though, like, they'll keep knocking on the door and they'll be really unlucky, they'll get a 98th minute penalty against Fulham. Dominic Solanke scored. That only came about from I forget who's running into the box, but it was quite a brave run into the box. It was Adam Smith. And you've got
Adam Smith still knocking around.
He is like, yeah, I think there are two Bournemouth players who went up from the last promotion, him and Junior Stanislas, who was actually riddled quite savagely with injury last season, I think.
Well, that's his calling card.
Yeah, I guess so. And it's quite sad because when he came on last season, or when he started, for example, he would, like, I remember the game against Blackpool at home, pretty early on in the season. He started in one of those number 8 roles. And it's weird because I normally think of him as a winger, but he was really creative. I think he set up a Solanke goal, and he came off in straight after that. And
yeah, I mean, this is like our 8th year potting or something, but we are obsessed with Junior Stanislas. Historically, we love him. So if he gets inside or starts playing minutes, like, we're going to be all in and around him, because I personally think he's got a lot in his locker, but he just can't he can't play for 2 months in a row without something happening. So, I think, and at this point, right, fitness is a skill, and it's just one that he unfortunately doesn't have.
I think it's just, it's sometimes as a footballer, a lot of footballers have just sort of, I think it might come down to a thing of sort of genetics, or just your body has just been under such wear and tear that certain people can take it and certain people can't, and your body is just like kind of gives way. You think of Michael Owen, it's just a bit sad, really. He just didn't have the power to pull that speed. Yeah.
So, that was a super eloquent and concise, summary of last season. Thank you. There are a couple names I just want to dive a little bit deeper. Billing, you mentioned, right, last time most of us saw him was when he was at Huddersfield. I love Billing. I couldn't believe that he's been spending time in the Championship over the last couple of years. I'm a Palace supporter. I was like, Huddersfield goes, buy Billing now, and he just stays down there in the Championship chilling. But yeah, I mean, we do remember him more as in that destroyer role, right? Like breaking up play, getting stuck in and throwing tackles around. So what kind of, roaming 8 or getting forward as that kind of midfield runner in the 8 role has he become? I mean, does he like top bin really good shots? Is he just kind of getting tap-ins, close range shots? What kind of goals does he score? What's he kind of up to these days?
He is, I guess he played kind of more as a second striker to Solanke at times, which is really weird. He's like a unicorn of a midfielder. He can play. He can play as a 6, as an 8, as a 10. Yeah. He was definitely the more advanced of the number 8s. Lerma would sometimes tuck in next to the holding midfielder Lewis Cook to defend against transition. But Billing would certainly, almost like for quite a large part of the season, he would lead the press. He would press from the front. His running numbers, he just doesn't stop running. And I think a lot of people thought of Billing as a kind of a luxury player. He's a bit sort of ungainly in the way he moves, and I guess that, when he's playing bad, he's very noticeable. I don't know if that's because his size or whatever, but he's just, when he has a bad game, it's a really bad game. But he just didn't have many of those under Parker last season. Parker seems to have gotten a tune out of him. He actually, when Parker was first appointed as the Bournemouth manager this time last year, and he had his first conversation with Billing, and Billing was one of the players that Parker really admired from afar. He was subject to interest from, I think, Norwich at the time and a few other clubs. I think not in England, I think abroad. And he basically went into to a meeting with the sporting director and the chief executive and was like, "Look, reject all offers for me. I don't care if I have to spend another season in the Championship. I want to play under Scott Parker." So they've definitely got that.
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, though. That's a little scary.
I mean, Parker has this kind of hypnotic sort of way with players that, like, when they have one conversation with him, every player just waxes lyrical about him. It's really like, I'm actually trying to put a piece together about it just to get like what exactly he says or the kinds of. But I think you've seen that team talk he gave in the Nottingham Forest game that went viral, right? He's a very emotive sort of speaker, so you can understand. He seems like quite a relatable guy, quite a genuine guy.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has a lot of that like man management kind of quality, right? We do see when you see so many players coming off and saying like, I love playing for him, is very instructive, very detail oriented, right? Telling me what I need to do to be successful, that kind of thing. You can't really teach that. But when it comes to putting all the pieces together, he keeps failing. So, I think something you touched on earlier, right, is that he's 4-3-3. It's one thing when you have the better team on the pitch, right? And what we keep seeing with him in the Premier League, right, when he's, last up with Fulham, sure, they have those couple month stretches, in the second half of the season where they're quite hard to beat, quite compact, conceding maybe one goal. They're also not scoring any goals. My concern looking at this Bournemouth team as it's currently constructed is that it's going to kind of end up being like a 4-5-1. Everyone's parked and Solanke is like the furthest man forward, like kind of at the center circle, and they just can't get out. You guys haven't bought any fucking buy a right back. What's going on with the? Like, do you have no money? Are you guys like under it from FFP? Like, why have you not added? Because this team is garbage comparatively, squad wise, to the rest of the league, right?
I think garbage is harsh. I think they've done like, okay, cool. That's a very good
recycling?
Question. And it's I guess you could call it that. It's some kind of advanced recycling. But no, I think the impression I get from the club is that they've done, and this is true, they've done very well to keep the likes of Jefferson Lamb and Lewis Cook, Dominic Solanke, Lloyd Kelly, Philip Billing, a lot of these players who probably could have gone elsewhere when they got relegated and probably could have, developed their careers elsewhere and made a name for themselves. And who knows where they'd be if they did that. But they kept them. They sort of fostered a vision under Scott Parker, and they wanted Parker as Eddie Howe's successor for a long time. So when they got that, they felt like they could now align the players with that vision. And the players have basically, for the most part, they've loved every minute of it. And I think the club's view is that they weren't going up to the Premier League now, they're much more equipped than they were the first time, and they were not equipped at all the first time, and they still managed to do pretty well. However, the Premier League has advanced quite a bit since then. But so have these players. Like the player that Solanke was when he went down, he was somewhere between a second striker and a forward. He hadn't really put any significant. He was never really the main guy in a team. He was always second, third, fourth choice or whatever. Even at Bournemouth, right? No disrespect, of course. But now, when they went down to the Premier League, he got the chance to sort of step up as the main man. And we've seen with other strikers, Ollie Watkins going down to the Championship and coming up as a top league striker. Tammy Abraham going down to the Championship and coming back better. Paddy Bamford not really that great. He hasn't really found his feet in the Premier League.
Well, he did 2 years ago.
But as I'm talking about since then, he's had troubles with injuries and it's been a bit difficult for him.
Sure.
But yeah, it's so we've seen that there's definitely a precedent for that, and I think Solanke is one of those players you mentioned who will probably do well. As for the others, you touched on the idea that they'll be under the cosh for a little bit. I do agree. I think a lot of their goals will come in transition. They'll definitely be ceding possession, sitting back. You said 4-5-1. I think it might even be a 5-4-1. They might go with. They've only got, I think, 4 centre backs at the minute, so it'd be very brave for them to do that. But I think they would have to rely on goals in transition. But having said that, Bournemouth, when it came to coming up against opponents who went toe to toe with them last season in the Championship, the better sides like your Huddersfields, your Fulhams, your Coventries, those sides who would really press and attack you, Bournemouth were just able to play through so simply and just sort of find the spaces in behind and unlock them and unpick them effortlessly. It was the teams lower down the table who would sit back that Bournemouth struggled against. Exactly. They're actually going to. So that's the sort of flip side, I'd say. Okay. And there are a couple of people I've asked. They don't play for Bournemouth anymore. Arnaud Danjuma, when he was at Bournemouth a couple of seasons back, I asked him if he found it more difficult in the Championship, because in the Championship he was killing it, but he had like 4 guys on him at all times because they knew how dangerous he was. And I was like, in the Premier League, like what's sort of more difficult for you? And he said the Championship is more difficult because I got 5 guys on me, 2 games a week. Some of the facilities aren't great, but in the Premier League, I've got all the space to play into, and if we time it right, and if we execute it right, which obviously takes hours on the training ground and a lot of sort of painstaking concentration, focus, If we do put all those pieces together and get it right, we can really damage teams on the break, because a lot of teams will play high line, and Bournemouth, like they love to score a fast goal on the break. They didn't score many of them, but when the opportunity presented itself, they definitely knew how to do that.
What does that look like? Because, I mean, it's, first of all, interesting note for me to hear you talking about Lerma, because I remember him as just being an absolute shithouse when he was up in the Premier League before. So I'm excited to see like how he's progressed and how he's evolved, because he showed to me like signs and little moments where it was like, oh, Lerma's doing a lot. But then I would watch, just get some crazy, insane yellow cards and just run around like a checking with his head cut off. So I could see how that like interplay could work from a defensive standpoint. But I mean, Solanke's not, the fastest runner, and Christie's, what is that pattern? Is it like Billing coming deep past to Anthony, Solanke getting him behind, or like, how is that quick hit for you guys usually?
For the majority of time, it will come from not necessarily a kind of a direct. Basically, Lloyd Kelly at the back is a very consummate passer of the ball, very confident in possession. Actually started out as an attacking left back, which is weird because he's very tall. Whenever I see a tall left back, I just think of Dan Burn, and that makes me feel very weird. Just seeing him trudge up and down the wing like that was crazy. That was just, And with Lamptey on the other side, I was just like, what is going on?
Like,
anyway.
I don't know.
Anyway. It's So Lloyd Kelly. He is a very good passer from the back, and he would often sort of drive this like sort of driven pass into the feet of Philip Billing, who would drop deep. And Billing has got like this sort of velvet touch where he would take it on the half turn, and then that would sort of break the first sort of line, and then now the whole team is just sort of the opponent's back line is just sort of backtracking, and they've got and then you've got all these sort of runners just arrowing forward at you, and it's just how the kind of space opens up with that initial quick punch.
Gotcha.
And Lewis Cook is often that initiator.
He's a good ball player.
He's really, really good on the ball, and defensively as well. For a player to come back from 2 ACL injuries, that is insane, and he looks like better now, which is crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, one of the last things I wanted to touch on is a little bit more on Solanke. I mean, I think I also is another, when I look at this team, the two players I love historically and today is Billing and Solanke. Like I've always loved them. And I agree with that point for you, right? With Solanke, where he was on Liverpool, he was getting some minutes, but they, you never know where they're going to come. Went down. He's still so young, right? And he's really like taking pens, main man, scoring all kinds of goals. I mean, for us, we've been kind of looking at him and talking about him as like a Pookie, kind of an output. Like, is he going to be able, not the way he looks. I think he's a million times better than Pookie. I don't think that's a comparison. I just am saying in terms of on the score sheet at the end of the season, like reasonably, like, do you think that it's kind of like a 13 goal, like 5 assist kind of year, or would that be underselling it? How do you see that?
It's difficult to say for sure. I'd like to think that he would hit double digits in goals, but it would just be, I think, because he is a big part of Bournemouth's attack. He scored last season a big proportion. I don't remember exactly. I think it was just over half of Bournemouth's goals last season in the league. I imagine he'll probably be similarly impactful this season. But it's just whether or not Bournemouth can get their attacks to click. I'll have to wait and see. But I know he's becoming a lot more ruthless in front of goal. I know his XG, he underperformed his XG slightly last season. And there were a couple of chances that he really should have tucked away. But on the whole, I've seen him tuck away chances that I really wouldn't have expected him to tuck away as well. In terms of the range of his finishes, he's got like he's becoming more of an aerial threat from set pieces as well. He's got the penalty down pat, which is obviously an easy way to get those goal numbers up. Left foot, right foot. The way Parker's team played, they don't really take many shots from outside the box. They definitely, in a similar way to early Pep at City, those sort of cutbacks into the 6-yard box area. So a lot of his shots come from there. A lot of the team shots in general come from there. And it's a good enough idea that, the closer you're taking your shots to the goal, the more likely they are to be converted as goals. So, he's definitely, he's got that predatory box striker in him, so where he can sort of get those ugly goals. He's definitely threatening behind. He's not the quickest, but he's definitely got, enough pace about him to get beyond the last line and time his run well. A physical striker as well. Definitely, he's also played as a number 10. So he's got this ability to sort of drop to the halfway line on the half turn, sort of literally carry a defender on his back and just sort of turn away with the ball, close, like glued to his feet. It's remarkable because he's like quite a tall figure. And to have that sort of close control and balance and speed and strength all combined, is really good to see. And then he'll just dart forward and just spearhead to sort of thrust the whole team forward with that sort of move, which is like, so he's got it all really, not just as a striker, but he can play a little bit deeper with runs beyond him. I think he can be quite the full package. Actually, he scored today. There was a preseason friendly that just finished now between Bournemouth and Sheffield Wednesday in Portugal. Solanke was on the score sheet. The game wasn't available to watch, but from what I can tell from the commentary and from what the club have said, it's basically he's been played through on goal. It's a typical Dominic Solanke goal. Been played through on goal, take a few touches,
far post,
for sure,
kind of goal,
like he just goes cold in that moment, and he's got that clinical nature that I think was lacking from him, and I think he backs himself. I don't want to put. You could probably tell I don't want to put a number on it. I want to say at least 10. I don't know about the assists because while he did get quite a few, I think he got 6 assists last year. That's not really. He's not really.
That's a lot to me.
Yeah,
but there's also fantasy assists aren't real. Like sometimes the rebound goal, right? That counts to me. That's an assist, even though like the real world it's not. But we play fantasy.
He'll probably end up getting quite a few of those, I think.
Yeah. I mean, him and Billing, they're both kind of like giraffes, and they are like so bizarre in how they do have that close control, and they're just physical units and just monsters. And it's going to be fun watching them play together.
Yeah.
Anthony and Christie on the wings. I mean, is there any interest there? Or are they really just like they'll chip in with the assist, the odd goal here or there? But I mean, are they going to really be able to be FPL picks, do you think, or they're just making up numbers?
I think Christie definitely, and if you look at his numbers last year, they are great in terms of his goals and assists. But I think he snuffed at a lot of chances. He's definitely from his time at Celtic, he's got great sort of ball striking ability. But at Bournemouth, he's been used in a couple of positions. He's always known exactly what to do, and it's just like he's got this sort of. I think he's probably the main guy. I think him and Anthony, I don't want to say him, he's the main guy. It's probably a bit unfair, but he's one of the main guys who would provide that extra bit of magic to unlock a team that you just have like the sort of like the dummies, the sort of the ball rolls, the flicks, the feints, all that stuff. He's the sort of one of the main guys in Bournemouth for that, along with Anthony. I think they definitely provide that threat. Whether or not that translates into
spanks him for doing things imaginatively and creatively. It's like, no, Ryan.
But yeah, I think Anthony is a little bit is a bit more of an unknown quantity in that regard, because this is technically his second full season professionally. Last season was his first, and while him and Zamora came through the ranks pretty well. I mean, they were, not to be disrespectful to them, they were only given that chance at the beginning of last season because there were like 9 first teamers unavailable, and they were the only people who could do it. And they performed so well that when those players who were fit came back, for example, there was Leif Davis from Leeds United who was on loan. And the idea was that they would sort of, him and Zamora would be the sort of 2 left backs fighting for the spot. Zamora didn't sort of put a foot wrong for the majority of the season. He became first choice. Same thing with Anthony. And whether or not that translates again to it, because it's a bigger step up to the Premier League, and he's still quite young, 22 years old. I'm not sure whether or not Parker will trust him there. I like to think he will. His numbers.
Does he have other options, like playing 4-4-2 with Kiefer Moore up? I mean, they kind of have to, right? They're not buying it.
Siriki Dembele is the other winger. He's a lot more tricky. He's a bag of tricks, that guy. If Bournemouth had a 5-a-side team, he would be the first name on my team sheet. He's so just remarkably it's. I don't even want to just put it all down to skills, because there's a certain level of balance and intelligence that comes with that. He just never gets shrugged off the ball because he's really small as well. I think he's 5'5". So it's just a little bit weird to nudge him off because he's so quick.
Ryan Fraser 2.0.
Probably. But yeah, he's definitely someone who thrives in space. So it's between him and Anthony on the left wing. I think Ryan Christie would be a lot more of a solid pick at 5.5. Billing is a little bit more difficult to tell. But if Billing plays advanced, he's my favourite out of those sort of 3.
Gotcha. Yeah, Christie's had an interesting kind of career. I mean, he's very prominent for the Scottish national team. Kind of fallen out of favor a little bit the last couple of years. But yeah, it's interesting. He did, he did play a lot of minutes last year. So I guess we'll see. And I mean, we didn't touch on the goalkeeper. I guess Travers is someone who is somewhat interesting because he should be busy. He should be keeping saves, and he did keep a bunch of them last year. That could be an option at the 4-5 shout. But I mean, I don't think the defense is really somewhere where we're looking FPL wise to pick players. I think it's probably more, if if a cheap midfielder emerges, and Solanke. Probably. Do you have anything more to say about that, or do you think that's pretty accurate right now when we're looking at things?
Yeah, I mean, personally speaking, I tend not to target promoted teams' defenses. I mean, if Travers would it's probably going to be the number one, so I'd say he'd make a good backup keeper if you have if you're going for a premium goalkeeper. I know the premium keepers are quite cheap as well, so you probably get two of them. But even if you wanted one, if you're going big elsewhere, you could definitely go for Travers as a backup. He'll definitely get the games out. And he got the Golden Glove Award last season in the Championship for the most clean sheets. So
Player of the season for Bournemouth, right?
Yeah, he put up some absolutely mammoth saves, and he won a heap of individual awards in a season when Dominic Solanke scored 30 goals for the first time in his career, which is quite remarkable. He was absolutely instrumental to Bournemouth staying in front or drawing, just putting so many points on the board at points that Bournemouth had sort of most of the ball, so he would be uncalled upon for the majority, and then have to switch on, and then he just pull out this barrel of amazing saves. It was crazy. Whether I think he definitely, I see him doing that a lot more in the Premier League and just growing as a player. But yeah, I mean, I tend not to target. I think Ryan Fredericks might be a decent asset at 4-5 as well. I think he?
He is 4-5.
He probably it's going to be a shootout between him and Adam Smith. Ryan Fraser is a lot more.
Adam Smith cannot be beating him for a job, right? That's crazy.
So Bournemouth have had in the past sort of 3 years Eddie Howe, Jonathan Woodgate, Jason Tindall, and Scott Parker. When Adam Smith is fit, he starts. It doesn't matter about anything else. When Adam Smith is fit, he starts, and that's one thing every manager since I've been covering Bournemouth have had with him. So I mean, sometimes I question it, but I think with the arrival of Fredericks, like I said earlier, they could go to a back three, which was more on wing backs. Fredericks is a lot more of a wing backy sort of attacking guy down that right hand side. I think he could definitely offer some. Not definitely. Let me not say definitely. That's a bit over-egging it there. I think he could potentially, perhaps, do something for you there if he gets that run of games. But he can also play on the left or the right, so he's a versatile one as well. He's one to keep an eye on, I think. Okay.
All right, man. I think we'll probably call it there. Do you have anything else you want to get out there before we say bye-bye?
Be sure to read my pieces on The Athletic. If you aren't subscribed already, follow me on Twitter @Ahmed Shubal. It's just my name. That's it, man. Thanks for having me on.
No, really appreciate it. I've been reading your articles as they've been coming out for Bournemouth. Love your content over there on The Athletic. Really, really happy to have you, and cheers.
Thank you very much, man. Peace.
Okay, I have Greg Mitchell with us from the Garibaldi Red podcast to talk some Nottingham Forest. Greg, how are you?
I'm good, yeah. Ready to go, to be honest. Seems to have been a long pre-season, so it's good to be back.
Long pre-season, a lot of years since you've been up in this division, huh?
yeah, I suppose that's probably why it feels
yeah, man.
23 years. I was a young teenager at the time. So
yeah, just a couple decades, no big deal, not a long wait. So, I want to get straight stuck in here. You had a nightmare at the beginning of the season last with Houghton, old man Houghton, nice guy, as everyone kind of reports, but didn't know what the fuck he was doing managing the team. Cooper comes in, bang. Tell me about that.
The unthinkable happened. You always dream that there's still a chance, but the season had got into pretty much, territory of no return. And then straight away, even the game before he started, so he was announced, but he didn't manage the team. We had Steve Reed come in and take the team, and the entire thing was different, and the whole crowd walked away from Huddersfield away, funnily enough, thinking, that looks good, that we've got a chance here, and it just snowballed. It's just the most incredible journey I've ever been on, and we've waited long enough for it, so I think we deserved it.
Yeah, so, Cooper came in and start playing three at the back. Looked like you guys were kind of in that 3-4-1-2. What was the style last season? Who were the main men? How did it come together? Were you an attacking front foot, possession, countering? How would you kind of describe that?
There was a lot of countering, but there was also a lot of clever play right from the back, right from Samba in goal, who's obviously now left us. But they were so calm at the back, and they'd play it. And if it got down that right wing, if it got to Jed Spence and then Johnson, we were unstoppable. And you could see teams trying to counter that and flooding their left-hand side, trying to defend it. And they were unstoppable. And it left our left side so open that if we ever did get too busy down there, it came and it seemed to keep working. We never really had to change our tactics because we seemed that good. Teams couldn't really cope with it. It was just magical to watch, to be honest.
So are you imagining sort of a similar style coming up into playing with the big boys, or are you imagining more of a solid, compact kind of, maybe more of like a 3-5 instead of like the 3-4-1? How do you think that's going to look this season upcoming?
I think Cooper's a very clever manager. He's one of these modern managers that we're very lucky to have him, and he will adapt and he'll change because, we're not the good team in this league. We're under no illusions that we're going to be one of the best, but we'll be clever. And I think we'll get the results through being clever. So he'll stick to 3 at the back and he'll have his 2 wing backs. I think we'll go probably 2 up front though. Shore the midfield up a bit because the midfield's the area where we haven't really recruited yet. So that's going to be interesting. But when we finished this season, Jed Spence was just incredible. He was immense and he looks like he's going to Spurs, but we've replaced him with Nico Williams, who's arguably even a better player. And, we're signing these players from Munich and from Liverpool now who we didn't dream we were going to play. So it is very much, even for a fan who's travelled home and away, it's into the unknown, really.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about Nico coming over, right? I mean, Jed Spence, 2 goals, 4 assists last season in the championship, played almost every game, right? I mean, he almost hit it like 3,700 minutes I'm seeing here. Nico has that understanding with BJ on the right-hand side from their Welsh, time together there. Do you imagine, and, as in FPL, right, we have Nico at 4 million, which is kind of a golden goose territory. Do you imagine that he's going to be able to, tick along a few attacking returns to kind of marry or maybe 8-9 clean sheet range and be a good pick there?
Yeah, because that's going to be the key to us at least staying up. Nick, we had to either keep Jed or improve on Jed. And I think incredibly, we've somehow managed to improve on him. And the understanding that Jono and Nico have got through the Wales team, I feel like it's going to work. And I know these teams we're up against are just the best in the world, but there's going to be occasions where it's going to work. And I'm confident that, from an FPL point, I mean, Nico, he's in my team straight away. So I feel like it is going to work. Fingers crossed it's going to work.
Okay. So, let's maybe move over and talk about a few individuals. It's tough, right? There's a lot of kind of hypothesizing and theorizing because you did lose like half your team. But, we're seeing Taiwo come in straight away to replace Keenan, right? He's back at Villa. And it looks like it's going to be him up top with Brennan Johnson, How do they, imagining Taiwo filling that role next to Brennan Johnson, how can we expect the two of them to interplay? Like who's dropping deep to hold it up? Who's running in behind? Like how did that work last year with Keenan? And then just projecting to imagine how it will work with Taiwo this season.
Yeah, well, Taiwo will do the Keenan job. And I mean, it's not out of the picture yet that we also get Davis. I mean, that's a rumour that's floating around quite a lot at the minute. So I wouldn't be surprised to have a late one for him. But yeah, I think Davis did the hold up well so well. I think that he'll replace him with that. And we've also got Surridge that did do a similar role, who I think will feature as well. He was a player that couldn't get in the Stoke team last year, and it shows what Steve Cooper does, changing these players just mentally and physically to be top players. So I think attacking wise and going forwards, we still do need one more just for cover. This 5 subs rule, it could kill us. So we've got to be careful there. But I think it will still be, we've still got that core group of players to have that similar way we play, if not slightly adapted because of, the quality that we're up against.
Mm-hmm. So, looking at Brennan Johnson, 18 goals, 10 assists, incredible season last season. Taiwo, he bagged his fair share over at Berlin. And they're the same price in FPL, are you really like Brennan's just the main man, he's going to be on pens, it's not even a question, or is that closer to you in your mind? Who's going to be getting on the score sheet more expectedly?
Well, this is why I'm not going to do very well, because I'm a man of my heart, and Johnson's going to be in there because he's just my guy. He's just unbelievable. Sure. But I've got Uni and Berlin friends, and they, as gutted as they were to lose him, they were excited to see him come to us. And it's that unknown with the players we get through Dane Murphy and and Cooper, that he could be the next thing for us. He could have 2 seasons with us and we're selling for God knows what. That's the excitement we get now with this. And we, like I say, we're not used to it. We've only had a season of this style of recruitment, this modern thinking, and it's probably why we haven't been successful for so many years, and it's suddenly clicked now. So I do feel like every signing we've made so far has the potential. They're young enough, they're from kind of unproven. Well, no, I suppose that's a bit cruel. Bundesliga's very good, but these players that haven't reached the potential yet. We're not buying these 34-year-olds that should scrape us through to survival. We're looking at next season and the season beyond.
Yeah, you got to like that recruitment policy, right? To buy, players who do have that ability to, sell on for a greater fee while also, doing the business on the pitch for you this season for sure. Yeah. So, BJ, yeah, clearly, the step up. He should be able to be ticking along with points. Taiwo, much more unproven, uncertain. I'm actually really glad you mentioned Serge because, I remember Serge when he was with Bournemouth when Howe was over there still, and he had a couple appearances there, and then he kind of went down to the Championship. But I always kind of liked the player whenever I've caught him. Going back a few years now. He's only $5 million in the game. I mean, is there any world where he can play with Johnson and Taiwo, or would that be strictly, one of them would drop out and Serge would come in, or could he do something with all three of them?
I don't think he'll get the game time, especially at
without
the start.
An injury.
Yeah. So I wouldn't. Well, he's not going to be in my team to start with, but I certainly wouldn't count him off for having another really good season for us. But yeah, I just don't think he's going to get that game time now. We're recruiting players, and again, rumours are we're still looking for maybe Davis to come in or another. So I wouldn't be at the minute.
Okay, so you don't expect when the window slams shut that he's your backup cover for the forwards. You do think one more is going to come in there? I
do, but if he is the backup, I'd be happy. He's a quality player. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I also wanted to kind of mention Jack Colback. He's been around, he's older, he's kind of that veteran hand now looking at your team as it gets younger. He kind of can do it all. I mean, he was playing some wing back last year. We remember him back when he was at Sunderland playing, really as a DM. He's a 4-5 mid. That's another kind of spot that, we always need at least one or two of in the FPL game. Is he going to get shouldered out by the incomings, or are you thinking he's still going to kind of roam around and get his game time and play a lot?
Well, we haven't made the midfield recruitment yet. So if we don't make many signings, he's going to be playing. He's going to be getting the minutes, and I trust him. I trust him to an extent, but he loves his yellow cards. That's the thing with Jack Colback.
You just get one a game. Make sure he gets one a game.
You can tell when he's going to get them as well. He runs a little bit quicker and he just looks a little bit more. But he's a quality player. He proved it at Newcastle, and he had a couple of quiet seasons with us, maybe. But then when he was forced to go into that left fullback role, he was great for us. He really was, and he's that kind of player you want in the squad, off the pitch and on the pitch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, cool. Also that 10 role, right? Zinkernagel played all those minutes. He's gone. Gibbs White, I've been seeing, some floating around names. Who do you want to see there? Who do you expect to come in, or what are some of the names that you're interested in that position? Because to me, looking at kind of that setup, a lot of times that might be the gold pick for FPL, right? Is that 10 role who's maybe like the second runner past the hold up guy and counterattacking, and the player's probably going to come in at an okay price. But who are you looking at there?
I'd love Gibbs White, but I think if it does happen, it's going to be the last day of the transfer window. It feels like Wolves are really trying to get a bidding war going. They've rumoured I think Everton had 20 million refused. So you're looking at the top ends of the 20s, which is astronomical for us. I mean, before this season, 13 million was the most we've ever spent on a player. It's strange that we seem to be looking at asset stripping Huddersfield now, as if we haven't done enough damage to him. So there's O'Brien from there, who's a quality player. I'd love to see him. We'd get him a lot cheaper. And again, he's that player that Cooper and Murphy would have identified to have that potential to go on, whether with us or whether in a couple of years you sell him for double what you paid. But Gibbs White would certainly be the top of my list, but I'd be absolutely amazed if we got him, and I'd love it, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, he seems like Wolves just hate him. They can't wait to get rid of him every season, and they suck. They can't score goals for shit. They just don't want their best creative player. I don't know. He's not Portuguese, I guess. They don't like that.
Well, yeah, it's not a Mendes guy. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we suffered the Mendes trait a couple of seasons ago. We've managed to shake that a little bit. So
yeah. So 17 cleans last year. Losing Samba and getting Hendo in, he's proven, we saw what he could do with Sheffield United. You got, 3 center backs. Are you expecting to keep a decent amount of clean sheets, or do you think it's really going to be a scrape and a struggle to just keep any this season?
No, we'll keep clean sheets. See, I mean, I look at how we're recruiting now, and then you look at, I don't think Fulham and Bournemouth have necessarily had the window we have yet. So there's teams there that we're going to be able to beat. There's teams that have been struggling the last few seasons, and the clean sheets are going to be key. And I don't think it's any coincidence that the initial month of our summer recruitment has basically been sort the defence out. Henderson, gutted to hear Samba was going to go to France, but God, you'd replace him with Henderson. As much as I loved Samba every day of the week, he's proved it with Sheffield United a couple of seasons ago. He gets the clean sheets. He's going to have a lot of shots to save. So I love the fact that we got him early. We've now just got Hennessy from Burnley as well, so shored that up. So
I'm a Palace supporter, and his questionable, actions back when he was with us off the field, left a taste in my mouth. Well, good luck with him. Another Welsh player, I guess. They can just keep speaking Welsh to each other. And you got the center back, right, Niakate, in, who's going to make up numbers. I mean, listen, right,
good.
Sam Cook, I'm sure he was doing a job for you last year in the Championship. He is not a Premier League player. There is no mistaking about that. I mean, in a 3, you could hide some of his deficiencies, I guess, but adding that extra center back is certainly going to help you guys over the long run, right?
And McKenna, again, I imagine he'll be Scotland captain within a couple of years. He is superb. Joe Worrell's probably going to be our captain next season. So those two, similar age, similar style of play. I love them. Yeah. And again, just getting that extra person in as backup or as the third man, because we do play 3 at the back, was key, and we've done it.
Yeah, no, it's looking good. It looks like it really is just that 10 role and maybe another forward.
Well, we've got the issue with getting Henderson on loan without a buyback was we can't have a second player on loan from Man United, because we all did assume we were going to get Garner. And you look at Man United. Well, they've signed another now, so he's about 4th in Man U's pecking order. So again, I don't know whether we'd be looking at trying to put a bid in for him later in the window. And if we did, I'd probably have him in my fantasy.
You can only have 3. You can only have 3, bro. you like keep clicking. It's like, why can't I put this 8th Forest player on my team? It's not working. Oh my God. Okay, well, let's finish up with just, I'm always interested to kind of hear about what the home support's like. I mean, I know you guys were a fortress at home last season under Cooper. You let up just a small handful of goals, the City Ground. Is it sort of, is that going to be a 12th man? Like it's going to be rabid and it's going to be a really tough place to go, where in fantasy it might look on paper like, oh, they're going at Forest, like, haha, they'll fuck them. But realistically, it's a tougher game than, maybe we could expect.
I'm full of optimism already this season. So, you have to take what I say with a pinch of salt. But we played Leicester, Liverpool and Arsenal at the City Ground last season in the Cup. Mm-hmm. Arsenal and Leicester, I know it wasn't their first teams, but they had a very strong squad. We brushed them aside so easily. And Liverpool, they beat us 1-0, but it was, it was a contentious goal and it was so close. So I feel like it will be a fortress. It's packed out every single game. You're not going to get a ticket for love of the money. And we kind of know what we've got to do. I think we are a vocal support, and it'll show next season, and it will have to. And we did do it last season. There's no reason we can't do it again this season.
Love the optimism. This is the time to be optimistic.
Yeah, don't get me on towards the end of the season and play about this. That would be bad.
No, don't worry. I mean, you get promoted, the deck stacked against you. You rip your hand off for 17th place, and that's the goal. That's the goal for your team, goal for Bournemouth, goal for Fulham. and we'll see where the chips fall at the end of the season. But you guys look good. I'm really excited to see your team. And any parting words or anything that we didn't kind of touch on that you wanted to mention?
No, I just think, like you say, we are looking good. And with the Fulhams and Bournemouths, they've still got a lot of parachute payments, which we've never had. So we really are starting from the bottom with this. And as Forest fans, I don't think any of us could be happier with how it's gone so far. And I just hope it translates to a decent start one way or another. To
points. I mean, you guys do have a pretty kind opening run, all things considered. Newcastle, West Ham, Everton. You could sneak out 3-4 points there, maybe catch one of them unawares.
And then September's the key for me. We're playing Bournemouth, Fulham. Leeds. We really have got a run in September, which I think will make or break the season.
Yeah. Home Bournemouth, home Fulham. With game week 6, game week 8, I'm seeing those are the big ones, right? Your other relegation home games. If you get definitely 6 points there, that's going to be huge. So we'll be cheering you on, Greg. The Forest. All right, man. Well, again, Greg's podcast, he hops on Garibaldi Red podcast. You can find them on Twitter at Garibaldi Red with a little underscore there. Unfortunately, I guess that was taken. But thanks so much for coming on, Greg. Really appreciate your time and your insights to Forest. It was excellent.
No, I enjoyed it. Good to speak to you, Adam.
Cheers. All right, we are moving on to Fulham. And with me, we have Cousin Walshy on Discord. He is a big-time Fulham supporter, been on Discord, Slack, fan of the pod for years and years and years. Welcome, Walshy. Thank you for coming on.
Absolutely, dude. It's the Cuz pod.
It's the Cuz pod. No relation, but except
you can
for
tell by looking at us.
I know, right? I know, but I think Fulham, we saw them kind of walk the championship last year. Kind of interesting changes, transformation to the squad slightly, but we do have a lot of familiar faces to the last time Fulham were up 2 years ago. But maybe kind of start with just giving us an overview of how the season went last year and what brought you guys back up.
Well, I think if you think about Fulham in general, everyone goes back to they were terrible last time they came up, they're going to get relegated. Well, to a certain extent, that's true, but that was also that season where they literally beat Brentford in the playoff final and then had their first kickoff less than 60 days later and had to fully revamp their defense, etc. So, and they had a manager who might be the most he's like Sean Dyche in fancy London clothes. So Parker basically went into the season and was like, I just don't want to get scored on, and was relatively successful at that. But what it meant was he neutered Mitrovic, made no attempt to get into the attacking third. When they did play weaker teams, he just tried to play possession. And it was just, the whole season was kind of a cluster. But even with that, if you look at their kind of XG or whatever the statistic guys say, they really should have finished about 14th or 15th. They just essentially had poor leadership. So take the fact that we have an upgraded attack, which we can get into, not so much of an upgraded defense, especially in the center. It's the same defense, but you replace the boy that you guys stole from us with Ream, and you're, a little bit more deficient there.
A little bit?
What's that?
A little bit?
Well, so if you think about it, though, Marco Silva changed the squad because he didn't change the formation structurally. There might be some nuance to the way that he plays it. But what Marco Silva did was he said, I don't want to just pass the ball around the back. I want you to move it faster and get it into the attacking half quickly. Kind of like you see, not that I'm going to compare Marco Silva to Pep, of course. They move it into the final third quickly. They're moving it around the back quicker, trying to find those spaces, and he wants to move forward. So I think what you're going to see this year out of Fulham, just at a high level, is they're going to attack. They're going to attack a lot against the bottom half teams. They're still going to get scored on because they play high line. And if you think about their defenders, even like Tim Ream's a great ball playing back. He's just slow and old. But when they're on the attack, he moves his defenders into positions where they can be helpful in attack. And then if they lose the ball and you have a skilled team that can put one over the top or make two passes and get Mo Salah, in the corner against Anthony Robinson, I mean, they're gonna give up goals. So against the weaker teams, they're gonna be trying to outscore the Brentfords and say Brightons of the league. And then against the top six, they're just gonna kind of maybe attempt to not get scored on 10 times, but
just get destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just they're not going to play. They're not going to sit there and just like shut up shop. I think he's still going to go for goals. But yeah, I mean, they're going to get pumped by Liverpool day one.
Okay,
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the defense is obviously concerning, and from a fantasy perspective, I mean, without really a 4 million player there's no real reason, I think, to spend time talking about that. So maybe we could just bypass that and look at some of the attacking options, because there are some interesting names. I think, first name I want to throw at you is Andreas Holgebaum Pereira, the new boy coming in. You guys saw Carvalho out, obviously, big miss. And, looking at maybe shifting to more 4-3-3 instead of 4-2-3-1 this year. What role do you see Pereira playing in this system for you guys next year?
So here's what I think is going to happen with Pereira. So we rid of John McKelsery. His contract is over. He's out. Pereira's in. So what you're going to see is he's going to play, and realistically, it's a 4-2 kind of 3-1 is how they end up attacking. So what he's going to do is he's going to play Pereira next to Paulinho or Reed in that kind of defensive mid role against the weaker teams. Then against the better teams, he'll have Harrison Reed and Paulinho playing the holding mid role, and then he'll move up into the floater role right behind Mitra.
Okay.
Against the weaker teams, he's going to still want him on the pitch, but he's going to want 4 full-time attackers in front of him. So, like, the funny thing is, of course, everyone on the planet should have him in their game week 1 squad. If he's not over 50%, then that means there's more than 50% bots out there. So, and that's just, he's an enabler. He's for sure going to start every game. And if you saw the game on Sunday, they got pumped by Benfica, shocker. But he's taking corners, and he had an assist to Mitro at the front post. He's on corners, even if it's just for the in-swinger right-footed, you're going to pick up some assists. I think it's pertinent to discuss now that what you don't see if you're not constantly following the Fulham shitty transfer news is that Manor Salman is coming over from Shakhtar Donetsk.
Why is that taking so long?
Well, so the issue is FIFA put in this ruling that any player still under contract can, without paying a fee, just go on loan anywhere they want. You can't register those players till August 1st.
August 1st, okay.
So he was in the stands at the game in Portugal against Benfica and Nice on Saturday. So he's been practicing. That was my big concern, was like, these guys that come in mid-August, they don't have time to get like into the squad and get integrated. So my assumption is that he's practicing with the squad. He's working with Silva. He's getting his marching orders, and he'll be ready to go week 1. Now, that doesn't really mean anything, structurally, because we're playing Liverpool, but there for kind of the Wolves, Brentford games, and is fully integrated, he could be very interesting. But when he gets registered, the question is if they put him in at a 5 or a 5-5. Then you have to make the decision, like, do I want, the 5-5 guy who's going to play either left winger opposite Harry Wilson or the floating Carvalho role? Or do I just want to take the 4-5 guy who's going to get 2 points a game and then get the occasional assist, the occasional goal? Assuming that you're doing an early wild card, I would look to bring Solomon in on the wild card. Because I think what you'd prefer is to have the guy playing further forward against the weaker teams when Marco Silva is trying to score, 3 goals. And then even against the better teams, you're going to have the guy sitting right behind Mitro that's kind of floating around, picking up scraps. But, that's going to be a team-specific thing.
So you're expecting him to either play 10 when you're doing 4-2-3-1 or play wing and not have Cabano in there or whatever on the left when you're playing 4-3-3? And Harry Wilson's got the right wing nailed down?
Right. So, we can just kind of float through the rest of the midfield, right? So Chalaba and Reed will rotate in that holding role. Paulinho will play every game.
Yeah.
Role. So then Harry Wilson is locked at right wing, and then Mitro. And then what you'll have on the role is a rotation of Cabano and Bobby Decordova-Reed and Solomon. Okay. But Decordova-Reed, well, right behind Mitro, he's probably like the second choice for that.
And
but I expect those guys to generally get phased into a squad role.
Sure.
And just, it'll be, listen, if the reports about Solomon are actually playing the Premier League, I think he's going to be a stud.
You're pretty optimistic over there on Maynard Solomon. I think there's a reason why he's being linked to Fulham. I mean, he's a good player at Shakhtar. You know, he's got Champions League experience, but he has to come in at 5, I think, for him to probably be an option. I mean, at 5'5", I think that's a big stretch.
Let's see. You don't want to pick up anything but the 4-5 enabler until after week 7, right? I mean, after we're done with the Chelsea Tottenham games,
you have a good run.
You get a pretty good run of like 7 or 8 games. So if he really is, if they are as attacking as I think they're going to be, and they've got a bunch of those weaker teams, he becomes someone that I'm going to look heavily at. Sure. I'll just sit on Pereira all year.
Sure. All right. Yeah. So that's a name to monitor for sure. And we didn't talk about the opening fixtures are pretty horrible, you know, up till game week 7, about as bad as you could look at for a run for Fulham. So, you know, a lot of the discussion today for, you know, some of the other players other than Pereira is maybe something just to keep in the back of your mind for the future. Mitrovic, you know, why is this year going to be different? You know, paint that picture for us, because last time he was up with Parker, it was pretty bad.
Well, you know, I've already shit on Parker. All I'm going to shit on him. I really like him, but he's just a disaster as a manager. Mitro and Silva have this like kind of bromance. And what you saw last year from Mitro, and it'll be interesting to see that, you know, in the first 6 games, I don't think many people are picking him up. I wouldn't have him week 1, you know, if he paid me. And under Silva was he really started to play, you saw him kind of play like a poor man's Harry Kane role, where when we would get the ball in defense, he wouldn't go hang off the defender and try and bully those guys. He would drop back to kind of the midfield line and into Carvalho's space. And then that would make room for Carvalho to go wide, or whoever plays that role. And then have Harry Wilson and Cabano make long runs into the corner. Or they would play it to him and then he would dump it off. So it's given kind of and he actually, for, you know, is big and kind of, I mean, he looks like a bouncer, right? Or a boxer, but he's actually got good touch. So he can receive the ball, turn, play it out to those guys down the wing, and then hopefully his lumbering ass can get in the box before, you know, they deliver it. So, you know, that was a huge change for him. He had, you know, a lot more assists last year. And then what you're going to see is, you know, he just kind of like makes his way into the box and get crosses in, and he does his thing. Good on headers. I mean, I don't actually think it's going to translate into that many more goals for him. I think he'll be a 8 to 12 goal guy, depending on how many pens they get. But even if they are very attacking, I think that you're still going to want to look at the guys who are picking up the scraps. So whoever plays that number 10 role, and even, you know, if there's a winger that can kind of find ways to get into the attack, because what he's really good at in the championship is hanging out about 12 yards out, 10 yards out, ball comes in, and he's able to just, you know, kind of inside of the foot into the corner of the goal or get a header or whatever. I think that all the defenses are going to crash on him. And what you'll have is balls kind of spilling out to the top of the box. And if guys can be there to get those, they'll pick up random goals that way. So I look at him more as an enabler to pick up a cheap midfield option that has the opportunity to get both assists and goals. And if you're right, and they're trying to score 3 or 4 goals against Brentford, then your Pereiras might have goal assist, you know, kind of combo days. Mm-hmm. If you're playing a Fulham guy, you know, you're really going to start him every week. Like, you're looking for opportunities for them to potentially do something for you.
Sure. Okay. So Mitro, a little bit more of a dropping in role, maybe not going to hit that 15, 16 goal mark that some people might be fantasizing about.
I like him for sure, high single digits, just because of the volume. I mean, they will create a ton more chances this year. It's just regardless, just because that's the way Silva plays. They've got good wingers, and they'll get the ball into him, and he's a focal point again. He wasn't under Parker, so you can't really call 2 years ago a bust year for him. 28, or he'll be 28 in September, peak of his career, getting ready for the World Cup. He'll be in there. If he was 6, maybe I would be like, yeah, I'm just gonna ride that horse and play him in the fixtures. I think he's gonna dong in. But at 6'5", I think there's just too many cheaper options at forward, and you can pick up a 5'5" or a 4'5" midfielder that's going to basically, in the games where you're going to play them, potentially has more scoring output from an FPL perspective.
Okay, interesting. I wanted to touch on also Harry Wilson. It's been a long time since he was in the Premier League. He was, Bournemouth back then. He was still Liverpool property, but he's had a really nice season for you guys last year. What is he looking like? Are you hopeful for? I know injuries have been an issue for him in the past. What could we expect from him?
Other than Mitro, he's the most locked in guy on the team. He'll just hang out there on the wings. He's going to take all the in-swing, left-footed corners, free kicks.
Direct frees, right? He's on?
Yeah, he'll be on almost all the direct frees. Maybe if they want the right-footed shot, they give it to Cabano. But if he's going to be a squad player, maybe Pereira is taking the right-footed shots and he's on the left-footed ones. But yeah, no. So I love Harry Wilson. I just, from an FPL perspective, from a Fulham perspective, he's fantastic. Opens it up. He'll swing in a lot of bouncing balls at Mitro's feet. He'll hit him in the forehead sometimes. I just don't think that the FPL output is there when you've got Pereira $1 cheaper, or is it $1.50? Is he 6?
Yeah, he's 6. He's not 5.
Yeah, $1.50 cheaper, and whoever else is playing that floating 10 left winger role. Unless those 3 guys are just crazy rotated, and Pereira lives, in a 6-8 role, then I might consider Harry Wilson, but
okay.
I just don't see it for 6.
Okay.
Only problem.
Okay. Yeah, I think they did sort of price him out of the game. He probably should have came in at 5'5". I'm not really too sure what they were thinking putting him in at 6, but it's a little unfortunate because there is a player there. So, basically what I'm hearing you say is that, Pereira is potentially a starter in our 11s when the fixture runs are good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. We definitely need to see.
Put him first on your bench just for 6 weeks in a row because you have some Man City guy, that you're not sure is going to start ever.
Yeah.
That's a great enabler role. And I think there's going to be some games where, you would just put him in your starting 11.
Okay.
We've got good fixtures.
Okay,
and
cool.
I think at the end of the day, 6, 7, 8 week period at the beginning of the year is going to tell you all you need to know. Okay.
Yeah, and it's probably more looking for his role, right, in those easier fixtures. Is he really going to be getting in the final third, or is he going to be held back more? And is he going to be more 6 or 8? And yeah. All right, good stuff there. I think one last thing before we get out of here on Fulham is the goalkeeping position. How secure is Rodak? Because Gazzaniga, we are familiar with him in seasons past. He's gotten some run before, but he's 4 million. Rodak's 4.5. Is he just gonna be the starter, Rodak, or is there a chance that he might lose that job?
So, what kind of the internal folks talk about Fulham? They just say Rodak is much better communicating with the defense. He's a pretty good shot stopper. He had a good year last year, and on top of that, Gazzaniga got a run out against Benfica, and they scored 5 on him, 3 in the first 30 minutes. And I'm not saying it wasn't the defense's fault, but a couple of them were this was your chance to make an actual save. They were kicking the ball right at him, and it was just kind of going through his legs and over his knee. So, that told me all I need to know about Gaz. But I don't see that as a play. He's my second keeper just in case Rodak gets the COVID week 1. But right now, they're about $500,000 away from buying Bernd Leno. And I think if they bring in Leather, it's the same thing they did with Areola 2 years ago. He showed up 2 weeks into the season, was immediately the starter. That was a pretty good 4 or 5 keeper. So I would more keep an eye out for who are they going to sign in the next month on loan or permanent, and then wait 7 weeks and see if Because if we sign a Joakim Anderson and an Areola again, well, September, I think that run between weeks 8 and 15 is going to be phenomenal. And yet at that point, you could even look at whoever locks down the right back role, Kevin and Boo Boo or something like that.
Babu from Wolfsburg over there, yeah.
That's supposed to be done today.
Yeah.
I think the problem, again, it's the first 8 weeks is your left back and your right back is going to be heavily rotated. The likelihood of us getting, Bernd Leno and Issa Diop in the next 30 days is, I'm not hopeful, but.
Okay. All right, cuz. I think that kind of does it. Is there anything else you want to touch on that we didn't already hit?
No, dude, just that I hate Liverpool.
All right, bro. Well,
I actually love Liverpool, but if we had Harvey Elliott and Fabio Carvalho on our team, we'd be in a lot better shape right now.
Well, them's the breaks.
Those are the breaks.
All right, bro. Thanks for hopping on. Really appreciate your time.
Have a great Thursday. We'll catch you guys soon.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.